Shalom, I'm Caleb. Generation for Truth Ministries was founded by Steve and me in 2022. Before fully committing to Generation for Truth Ministry, I was a semiconductor engineer, and Steve was a biotechnology engineer. So, what exactly motivated us to dedicate ourselves full-time to Generation for Truth Ministry? First, we have to start with our family background. Steve and I grew up in a Christian family, and we are sixth-generation Christians, which is very rare in Taiwan. Whether it's relatives on our father's side or our mother's side, you can hardly find anyone who isn't a Christian. However, we grew up in a very traditional Christian background, and the word Israel was something we were very unfamiliar with. The concept of replacement theology is rooted in us. Since childhood, we were taught to claim every blessing in the Bible as our own, but whenever we came across words of curse, they were all attributed to Israel. And as for what the Torah is, we had absolutely no understanding. In the past, we mistakenly believed that all 613 laws of the Torah were nailed to the cross with Yeshua, so they were no longer important at all and didn't need to be followed. We thought it was enough just to obey the words Yeshua spoke in the four Gospels. We had no idea before that every word and every sentence Yeshua spoke in the four Gospels came from the teachings of the Torah, and that Yeshua himself is the living Torah, the Torah in the flesh. However, in 2016, our lives underwent a tremendous transformation. In 2016, I went to Israel for the first time. I joined a tour group organized by a church group from Taiwan. This group held several gatherings in Israel, and the theme of these gatherings was about Gentiles and Israelites becoming one, united as one new man. I remember that when I attended the first gathering in Jerusalem, the very first worship song we sang had lyrics about Yeshua being the great king, and how we should welcome him into the city of Jerusalem. I was deeply moved inside. Oh my God, I am standing in Jerusalem right now, singing that Yeshua is the great king, and that we welcome him into the city of Jerusalem. Suddenly it hit me, Yeshua is Jewish. Jerusalem is his city. He is going to reign as king on the throne in Jerusalem. In that moment, I just kept crying and crying, sobbing uncontrollably. The amazing thing is, the toxic root of replacement theology that had been in my heart for the past 25 years was instantly pulled out by God. After I returned to Taiwan, I immediately shared this with my brother Steve. I excitedly told him that Israel has not been replaced by the church, and that God's choosing of Israel has never changed, from the past to the present and into the future. To my surprise, my brother Steve immediately started debating with me, trying to defend the traditional replacement theology teachings of the church. After a few rounds of debate, Steve humbly admitted that he was wrong. However, that night, Steve prayed to God. He prayed, "Even though I know in my mind that I should love Israel, I admit that in my heart, I don't really love Israel. Please give me a heart that loves Israel." Then, a miracle happened. The next morning, when Steve woke up, he was amazed to find that God had truly given him a heart that loves Israel. Every time Steve prayed for Israel, praying for peace in Jerusalem, he would start to cry and shed tears. So our journey of returning to the roots of the Torah began in 2016, when we received a heart that loves Israel. After that, we started to learn step by step. We learned to observe the feasts of the Lord, studied Hebrew, and began to study the Torah every week. We also saw the great demand for Torah teachings in the Chinese-speaking world. So in 2022, we officially launched the Generation for Truth ministry to share Torah teachings with the Chinese-speaking world. We believe that in the end times, there will be a greater exodus of the whole house of Israel. Now, Jews scattered all over the world, and even the lost 10 tribes, will join the procession of Aliyah and return to Zion. This procession of Aliyah will gather and assemble from many directions, just as Isaiah 49 verse 12 says, "Behold, these shall come from far, and lo, these from the north and from the west, and these from the land of Sinim." So the whole house of Israel will be gathered by God from many directions, joining the procession of Aliyah, embarking on the journey of the greater Exodus. And we believe that in this procession of Aliyah, there will also be many Gentiles joining in. The Gentiles will first prepare in many places among the nations to receive the Jewish people, and when the final Aliyah begins, the Gentiles will also join the procession, helping the whole house of Israel return to Zion. Isaiah 49 verse 22 says, "Thus saith the Lord Adonai, Behold, I will lift up mine hand to the Gentiles, and set up my standard to the people, and they shall bring thy sons in their arms, and thy daughters shall be carried upon their shoulders." Here, God gives a very specific and vivid description of how, in the end times, Gentiles will help God's children return to Zion. And in Isaiah 66 verse 20 it also says, "And they shall bring all your brethren for an offering unto Adonai out of all nations upon horses, and in chariots, and in litters, and upon mules, and upon swift beasts, to my holy mountain Jerusalem, saith Adonai, as the children of Israel bring an offering in a clean vessel into the house of Adonai." So now we are connecting with Christians from many countries who are studying the Torah.
This video emphasizes how Gentile Christians have been ignited by the light of the Torah. Of course, we prefer to call ourselves Messianic Gentiles.
Many of them are preparing to receive Jewish people and are getting ready to join this procession of Aliyah, helping the whole house of Israel return to Zion. Another interesting thing is that, because we live in Taiwan, several verses in Isaiah are especially encouraging to us. For example, Isaiah 24 verse 15 mentions the east and the islands. Isaiah 24 verse 15 says, "Wherefore glorify Adonai in the fires, even the name of the Lord Adonai of Israel in the isles of the sea." We are in Taiwan, which is located to the east of Israel, and we're an island too. This verse feels just like a calling for us. Next, Isaiah 42 verse 4 also says, "He shall not fail nor be discouraged, till he have set judgment in the earth, and the isles shall wait for his law." The original Hebrew word for law is Torah, so the islands are waiting for his Torah. We in Taiwan are an island, and now Taiwan is beginning to experience the restoration of the Torah. So it turns out all of this was written in the prophecies of the Bible. So the islands have always been waiting for the Messiah's Torah. So when we study the Torah, our hearts burn with passion, because we are walking in God's prophecy. And we deeply believe that only when Gentiles, when Christians, truly return to the foundation of their faith and recover the lost Torah, can we truly be united with the Jewish people, become one new man, and prepare for the return of Yeshua the Messiah. Because the Gentile church and Christians have already portrayed Yeshua in a way that completely loses the image of the Jewish Messiah, we as Christians must repent and turn back to the Torah. Only then will we have the ability to share a gospel that is rooted and grounded, and only then can people truly come to know Yeshua, the Messiah of the Jewish people. To know Yeshua the Messiah is to live out the teachings of the Torah, and in the end times, in the Messiah's kingdom, Yeshua will also govern the kingdom according to the Torah. Next, we will share with you the practical actions and testimonies of our ministry. Now is the era of new media, and any information can be spread rapidly through social media. That's why we run the Generation for Truth YouTube channel, where we share teachings on the weekly Torah portion, Hebrew roots, end times, and Israel-related topics. Over the years, we have accumulated a rich collection of Torah study resources, providing them for the broader Chinese-speaking community. Since 2022, we have been teaching the weekly Torah portion online every week. What started with just a dozen people has now grown to over 100 Christians joining us online each week to study the Torah together. These Christians come from Taiwan, China, Malaysia, Mongolia, Australia, the United States, and Cambodia. We have seen the message of the Torah rise greatly in the Chinese-speaking world, with many Chinese people beginning to long to study the Torah. Some churches in Taiwan have even started inviting us to come into their churches to share the message of the Torah. There is a church in Taiwan that, over the past year, has watched many of our online videos sharing about the Torah and has developed a deep hunger for the message of the Torah. Because of this, they decided that this year, the theme of their weekly sermons would be based on the weekly Torah portions. They have also invited us to regularly come to their church to share about the Torah. Although most of these churches in Taiwan that have received the Torah have not yet switched to gathering on the Shabbat, we believe that God will lead them step by step, guiding these churches to gradually enter into the Shabbat and receive God's heart for the Shabbat. We firmly believe that all the prophecies in the Bible concerning Israel's return to the Promised Land will happen in the future and be fulfilled in full, and that God will prepare many Gentiles who return to the roots of the Torah to become helpers for Israel's return to the Promised Land. Therefore, starting in 2023, we opened our home in Taiwan to host Jewish travelers from Israel who are visiting Taiwan as a way to prepare ourselves, so that when the greater exodus truly happens in the future, not only will our hearts be ready, but all the necessary supplies will be prepared as well. Between 2023 and 2025, we hosted about 70 Jewish travelers, most of whom were between 20 and 30 years old. Among these 70 Jewish travelers, Most of them identified themselves as secular Jews. During the hosting process, we also discovered that these young people actually didn't know much about the Torah. In fact, you could say they were very unfamiliar with it. Most of them had only read the Torah in school, but after graduating, they never touched it again. Many of them didn't even value Israel's identity as God's chosen people. We actually felt really sad about this. We originally thought that every Jewish person would know the Torah by heart and have a strong tradition of faith passed down. But when we interacted with these young people in their 20s and 30s, it gave us a new understanding of the real state of faith among many Israelis. It also made us realize even more that there's a very important reason for Gentiles returning to the Torah. It's to provoke Israel to return to the Torah as well. Next, I'd like to share 2 testimonies. The first testimony is that we once hosted a Jewish traveler who said he was a descendant of Aaron the high priest, because his Hebrew name contained the word Kohen. At the agreed-upon time, I drove to the train station to meet him for the first time. As soon as we met, I told him, "Our family follows the dietary laws of the Torah, so you don't have to worry about anything when you eat at our home." To my surprise, he was so moved that he immediately started to cry in front of me. During the next 3 days we spent together, we kept sharing information about the Torah with him, encouraged him to start studying according to the weekly Torah portions, and even told him about how, back in the wilderness, the Israelites camped around the tabernacle and which position Aaron's descendants were assigned. He was amazed and said to us, "You know so much more about the Torah than I do." The amazing thing is, a year later, in November 2024, we arranged to meet in Jerusalem. He suddenly asked me, "Are you and Steve still studying the weekly Torah portions?" I replied, "Of course we are." To my surprise, he went on to tell me, "Hey, this year I also started studying according to the weekly Torah portions." It was truly amazing. Next, let me share a second testimony. We hosted a recently retired Air Force officer. We told him that we were learning Hebrew and studying the Torah in Hebrew, and we also shared with him that you can see prophecies about the Messiah throughout the Torah. He was really surprised. The second day he stayed with us happened to be the Shabbat, so we invited him to celebrate the Shabbat with our family, and we even blessed each other with the Shabbat Kiddush. He told us that he had been traveling for 6 months, and that this day was absolutely the best day of all. For this young Jewish man, meeting Gentiles like us who have returned to the Torah must have been both surprising and unforgettable. In the middle of our conversation, he suddenly asked me a question. He said, "Do you believe that one day Jews and Gentiles will become one?" I immediately answered, "I believe so." Of course, I know in my heart that for Jews and Gentiles to truly become one, it's not enough just to believe that Yeshua is the Messiah. They also need to return to the Torah. Only then will there be true unity. But I believe that this young Jewish man has already started on the path of returning to the Torah and seeking the Messiah. Through studying the Torah and hosting Jewish people, we have come to understand more deeply God's love for Israel and the important place Israel holds in God's heart. Therefore, after the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, we decided to support Israel through concrete actions. So, 1 month after the war broke out, on November 9, 2023, Caleb and I brought donations from Christian Torah communities to Israel. These Christian Torah communities come from many different countries, and together we donated to make winter military jackets for the Israel Defense Forces, IDF. This donation provided a total of 461 military jackets. For this donation trip, we only stayed in Israel for 3 nights before returning to Taiwan. After returning to Taiwan from Israel, we noticed that the international wave of anti-Semitism was growing louder and louder. Even in Taiwan, some pro-Palestinian groups started to appear, constantly spreading false information in Taiwanese media in an attempt to smear Israel. At the start of 2024, with several other Christian friends who support Israel, we founded the Friends of Israel Alliance in Taiwan. Our goal is to unite Taiwanese voices supporting Israel and speak up for Israel in the media. And on May 18, 2024, we held the largest pro-Israel concert in Taiwan's history, the Love Israel Concert. More than 1,700 people gathered at the event, sending a strong message of unwavering support for Israel to the international community. This Love Israel concert was also reported by several Israeli media outlets such as the Jerusalem Post, Ynet, and the Institute for National Security Studies. Taiwanese media also cited it as important evidence of the Taiwanese people's support for Israel. From 2022 until now, we have connected with many Chinese communities from different countries who are returning to the Torah. Many of them, like us in the past, come from traditional Christian backgrounds, but God has moved them to return to the Torah, the roots of their faith. We believe this is because God's timing has arrived, especially after October 7, 2023. With the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas war, many Chinese Christians began to pay attention to Israel. Even more Chinese people, as they started to focus on Israel, have now joined the movement of returning to the Torah. Therefore, I firmly believe that there are already tens of thousands of Chinese people around the world who are on the path of returning to the Torah. I remember back in February of this year, I hosted a Jewish person and told him that now, all around the world, many Chinese people are studying the Torah. Some have even started to observe the feasts of Adonai, keep the Shabbat, learn Hebrew, and so on. I also shared some videos and photos with him, and told him, when you see your God moving so many Gentiles to return to the Torah, you should know that the God of Israel is the true God. What he said next really moved me. He said, "What you just shared made me feel once again how unique our identity as the chosen people is." In the past year or two, God has moved us to connect with many different places and countries, with groups studying the Torah. Some of these connections were made online, while others involved traveling to those places to meet and gather with them in person. We were truly amazed to discover that God has already prepared many Gentile Christians around the world to return to the Torah, to rediscover Yeshua the Messiah from the foundation of the Torah, and to be willing to follow the teachings and commandments of the Torah. Currently, the groups we are connected with are from Malaysia, China, Hong Kong, India, Israel, Madagascar, Mongolia, Australia, the United States, Japan, and Singapore. We pray that the message of the Torah will rise among Christian communities all over the world. Only when Christians return to the Torah can they truly be united with the Jewish people and welcome the coming of Yeshua the Messiah together. Amen.